Dark magic, mythical beasts, and an iconic world just waiting to be explored. Hey there friends, it's Codiak here. Welcome back to Legacy Gaming. Grab your wands, brew up those potions, and get ready because today we dive into one of 2023's most anticipated games, Hogwarts Legacy. 2023 has all the potential in the world to be a massive year for gaming, and like most years, big blockbuster titles will anchor the gaming community throughout those 365 days. In 2022, we had Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, heck, I'll even throw Stray into the mix, but in 2023, what happened last year doesn't matter, and if there's one game everyone has high hopes for, it's Hogwarts Legacy. Warner Brothers created the studio developing Hogwarts Legacy, Portkey Games, for this purpose and this purpose alone, to create an epic Harry Potter adventure, and by all accounts, things are looking good. But as we break everything down in the minutes ahead, remember, a healthy dose of caution is encouraged with every AAA release. Let's first set the stage and talk story, which is easily one of the most important aspects with this game. What we do know is simple. You're a fifth-year student that's been granted late admittance to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. You hold the key to an ancient secret that's threatening the school and will embark on a dangerous journey to uncover that truth. We've seen a smattering of characters, and some trailers have hinted at an epic showdown between wizards and goblins, but outside of that, the story is largely a mystery, as it should be. One thing we wanted to note was that while J.K. Rowling wasn't directly involved with the development of the game, Portkey Games has reassured players that they've worked closely with her team on all aspects of Hogwarts Legacy to make sure it remains in line with what players expect from the magical world. Regardless of your thoughts on Rowling and her controversies, we choose to focus on the game and the world we know millions of players are excited to explore. For all the books, movies, theme parks, and more, we know there's still a lot of the wizarding world left to discover, but it's important to understand when things take place within the game, so we can try and ground ourselves in some sort of reality. Hogwarts Legacy drops players into the late 1800s, more specifically around the 1890s, as seen in this newspaper clipping. For context, the Magical Beasts series takes place in the 1920s, and the Harry Potter books and movies play out throughout the 1990s. We're diving in a full century before Harry Potter, so expect things to be quite a bit different. You'll quickly see architecture, technology, and the overall lifestyle in and around Hogwarts is themed perfectly for the time period. We're told not to expect to run into too many familiar faces, but there will be plenty of references throughout the game that will eventually make their way into the books and movies as we know them today. Also keep in mind that things like broom technology, potions, and even spells themselves are still being developed and mastered at this time. Things are going to feel different, and that's by design, so don't go into the game expecting to fly around on a Nimbus 2000. The 1890s influence is immediately seen as we start to engage with the game's first system, the character creator. I won't lie, this isn't revolutionary by any stretch, but it's such an important part of this game's experience. The idea of creating a witch or wizard is something we've been dreaming of doing for decades, and Hogwarts Legacy is finally allowing us to live out that fantasy. You'll notice standard sections and toggles throughout, as the basic clothing and styles are a clear representation of the time period. Presets help you get started with your character, but you can choose to further refine that with your own creation. Everything we've come to expect from a modern character creator are there, giving you options to tweak things such as facial structure, eye color, hairstyle, you name it. One feature we haven't seen before that we think is pretty interesting is voice pitch, which further adds a layer of customization to your own witch or wizard. Creating your witch or wizard is really only part of the equation. As we all know, being sorted into your house is really where the magic begins. Believe it or not, you can actually choose your house right now. We have a video on the channel walking you through exactly how you can do that and pick up some extra in-game rewards in the process. Once you create your character, you'll then be sorted. And yes, that's when you'll meet the famous sorting hat. As a fifth year, you'll still get to experience the ceremony in-game, whether you choose your house ahead of time or in the moment during the playthrough. Once sorted, you'll have access to your new house's common room, something I'm sure you're all eager to explore. The team has done quite the job making each common room feel unique and immersive, creating spaces that align so perfectly with the lore of each house. Gryffindor, the most established common room throughout the series, looks much as you'd expect, with maroon and gold tapestries, plenty of comfy seating, and a regalness fit only for Godric Gryffindor's house. In contrast, the cold and dark common room of Slytherin strikes a much different vibe. Set in the dungeons, it's not the least bit warm and cozy, and is exactly where you'd expect witches and wizards of Salazar's house to spend their downtime. Located in one of the castle's towers, the Ravenclaw Common Room is easily one of my favorites, with floor-to-ceiling windows and an emphasis on elegant design, perfect for the students of Rowena Ravenclaw. Finally, we have the Hufflepuff Common Room. As you might expect, every inch of this space is filled with plants of all different varieties, and everywhere you look is some sort of wooden architecture or accent. The Common Room feels almost den-like, which perfectly aligns with the Hufflepuff's heraldry featuring a badger. What's a true student experience without shuffling between classes and completing a laundry list of chores and assignments? Well, this is where the core progression of the game really kicks in, but in a meaningful and hopefully enjoyable way. Players will participate in 4 primary classes: Charms, Herbology, Potions, and Defense Against the Dark Arts, each taught by a different professor. As we mentioned before, these are characters you won't be familiar with, but will no doubt be integral to our experience within the game. In Charms, we'll learn under the twinkling eye of Professor Abraham Ronan, a jovial and light-hearted individual. He's known for his playful spirit and for incorporating games into his teachings, which we got a glimpse of in one of the developer showcases. In Herbology class, students will learn under Mirabelle Garlick, a London-born witch that grew up in a house full of muggles. She radiates sunshine and charm and is said to have truly blossomed once she arrived at Hogwarts. In sharp contrast to Mirabelle is Aesop Sharp, the potions teacher. An ex-Auror with an impressive knowledge of battle-worthy elixirs and drafts, his curriculum is said to be amongst the most challenging at Hogwarts. Not easily impressed, winning over this professor may be the key to your success against the evil that's enveloping the world. Finally, we have Dina Hekar, the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. As a former Ministry of Magic employee, she's a stern but likable professor that prefers a more hands-on approach to teaching. Some say her time in the Department of Mysteries has left her with a need to satiate a desire for action. According to the devs, classes will act as one of the main progression checkpoints throughout the game. You won't be forced to attend classes on a set schedule or anything ridiculous like that, but classes will act as major moments throughout the gameplay where you'll unlock new spells and abilities, as well as move the story forward. Each class aligns with a different aspect of the combat systems within the game, so it's only logical that our time in class will directly influence how capable we are in a fight. Obviously, we have spells, so that's where Charms and Defense Against the Dark Arts factors in, but we also know that we'll have access to magical plants such as Venomous Tentacula, Chinese Chomping Cabbage, and Mandrakes. We also know that potions will be an on-demand resource for buffs, which I can only imagine will unlock and advance as part of Potions class. It's all tied together, and that's exactly the type of system interaction we love to see here on the channel. Aside from the main curriculum, the devs have hinted that there will be additional classes and tasks outside of those 4 primary subjects we just discussed. Engaging in these will net players experience, additional spells, allow players to fill out their collectible logs, and unlock items not otherwise obtained during the main storyline. I love the inclusion of engaging side quests in any RPG, as it provides a fun break from the linear nature of a more guided experience. Hopefully these go beyond simple fetch quests and, more importantly, have aspects of storytelling baked right in. The sky is really the limit here, and with such an open and expansive world ripe for development, the team has plenty of opportunities to create some interesting side content for players to explore. Now, we have seen 2 examples of optional side content during one of the developer showcases. In both cases, our character receives quests from other students around Hogwarts. In one instance, we're tasked with locating the Daedalian keys. These keys unlock hidden cabinets somewhere else around Hogwarts. The other quest has the player finding gobstones scattered somewhere around the castle. It's hinted that gobstones might be a playable minigame, but that's not confirmed. Each quest starts with some back-and-forth dialogue that gives the player a decent amount of freedom how they choose to respond. It's still not entirely clear if and how morality will come into play, but based on the responses we've seen, there's definitely the opportunity to be a royal witch or wizard prick. Hogwarts is massive, and while we haven't seen everything quite yet, the team has done a nice job showcasing its scale without revealing all of its secrets. Every area we've been able to explore ahead of launch seems teeming with activity, and hopefully that translates some way into the gameplay. As the seasons change, so does the castle, and the developers have said that activities in and around Hogwarts will vary based on that season. While Hogwarts Legacy is a single-player RPG, that doesn't mean you'll experience the game alone. In fact, a little-known companion system ensures that you'll have someone watching your back throughout various points in the game. At this time, we know of 4 confirmed companions: Sebastian Sallow, a Slytherin with a twin sister suffering from a mysterious curse; Natsai Onai, a Gryffindor whose mother just became Hogwarts' new divination professor; Poppy Sweeting, a Hufflepuff with a knack for taking care of magical beasts; and Amit Thakkar, a Ravenclaw that aspires to be a famous wizard historian. While this system is still largely a mystery, we do know that companions will have special quest lines associated with them. We know that choice could play a huge factor in the outcome of those quests, and possibly even those friendships, but without much more to go on, we'll just have to leave it at that for now. As you explore Hogwarts and the surrounding world, you'll be guided in your adventures by the Wizard's Field Guide, which acts as your menu, but also your gateway into various other systems within the game. At this point, we've only seen a glimpse of the Field Guide, but it's enough of a look to provide us with some key details. Up top, we've got our character's level, which indicates a traditional RPG leveling system. If we go clockwise, we of course have an option to view our map. While we haven't seen this feature full screen quite yet, this great video by fellow content creator Ben Snow gives us just a glimpse at what a fully realized Hogwarts Legacy map could look like. I've left a link to his video in the description below. Next is our quest menu. As far as we can tell, players can track one active quest on screen in-game, and I imagine we'll be able to toggle through and track progress via this menu in the field guide. Moving along, we have Owl Post, which is a bit interesting. It's a single-player game. It's not like we'll be sending mail to one another like we would in an MMO, so what does Owl Post mean? This could just be a clever way for the game to send you bits of lore or possibly even items. It would make sense given how owls are used in the books and movies, but it's still unclear within the game. We do know that Hogwarts has the famous owlry, which we can visit, so I have a feeling all of this will tie together. If we keep trudging along, we have settings. Plenty we'll be able to dive into at some point. Straight at the bottom of the Wizard Field Guide are challenges. This is a really interesting aspect of the game the developers have spent a good amount of time talking about. Within challenges are 5 categories: combat, quests, exploration, field guide pages, and the Room of Requirements. It's easiest to think of these like achievements. As you complete the various challenges, you'll unlock the achievement, and those accomplishments will be tied to additional XP gains. But if these challenges unlock additional things, such as items or cosmetics, we just don't know. Like most achievement-style systems, completing some of these challenges will just happen as you play the game, where others will most likely take you off the beaten path as you explore more optional content within the world. For example, we saw a player use Accio to snatch a field guide page that was floating around the castle. I have to imagine there are dozens, if not hundreds of these, flapping around different parts of the Hogwarts Legacy world. Tied to challenges is the next menu option, Collections. Based on the picture of a wizard studying, I have to guess that this is a sort of lore repository, a place for players to learn more about the things they collect and see during their adventures. It's a wild guess, but makes the most sense in this type of RPG environment. It could also be tied to the cosmetic system, but I'm less confident of that. Back on our menu screen, we also see an option for talents, which we'll talk about in just a bit. Next on our list, we have Inventory, which indicates we'll have a way to store all sorts of items we find during our adventures. Finally, Gear, which I would guess leads into a pretty standard RPG loadout screen. We'll also dive into Gear in just a bit. Like I said, there's a lot we can learn from the menus, but sadly, still a lot of unknowns we can't quite define. Of course, that's by design, but it just means we'll have to speculate a bit longer until the truth is revealed. While attending class and completing quests will be enjoyable, there's no denying one simple truth. Being a witch or wizard is all about the spells. The majority of your experience will be utilizing your spellbook to manipulate the world around you, be it discovering secrets with Revelio or shaking down your foes with the treatment of Descendo. You're likely to find a use for every single ability at some point in your playthrough. The devs have indicated that there will be groupings or categories of spells to help players better understand the overall role of that ability in the larger kit. So far, the team has only identified 3 by name: damage, force, and control, but there are clearly more, as we can see distinct groupings of spells in this blurred out showcase here. The team has been very selective when showing off the overall spellbook, and I get why. I can see unlocking or learning a new spell as a highlight within the game, and the team is almost approaching spells as spoiler territory. Now, speaking of spoilers, we're going to dive into all of the spells we've been able to identify within the game, so if you want that to be a surprise, just skip ahead to the next chapter. And with that out of the way, let's check out direct damage spells. Blasting out of the gate is Confringo, a direct fire blast attack that leaves the wand and travels across an area towards its target and inflicts burn plus a degree of stagger. This has the capacity to rapidly close distance and I think will be a popular spell with its lasting burn effect and interrupt potential. This isn't to be confused with Incendio, which expels a closer and more channel-like flame directly from the wand. The intended use is to set things alight, but we can see through many combat sequences just how deadly this can be. We even get what appears to be variations, most likely opened up by upgrades either via gear or direct spell points, as seen here with this follow-up Ring of Fire effect. Next up, and also closely aligned with the elements, is Glacius. Adding to your arsenal of damage and crowd control spells, Glacius does what you'd expect, freezing an enemy in their tracks. Even large enemies like trolls are vulnerable to the spell, although it appears an enemy's size may affect the duration of their frozen state. If you look carefully through all the action here, you can see Glacius cast on an enemy and then a follow-up attack that shatters the ice, dealing large AoE damage. This is again likely an upgrade to the spell through one of the various progression systems within the game, and it's really exciting to see the team actually change the nature of the spell with upgrades versus simply bumping up the damage or speed. In the Dark Arts preview section ahead of launch, we saw a lot of great combat, including the infamous Unforgivable curses. In the wizarding world, these spells are highly illegal and if used, can result in life imprisonment and banishment from any order. In-game, they're shown to leave marks on targets and via spell upgrades can even link multiple enemies together to share damage and ultimately instantly kill several targets at once. The first of the 3 Unforgivable curses is Crucio, or the Cruciatus curse. Any victim unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end is caused intense pain and suffering while not causing physical damage. In practice, this appears to mark the enemy and immobilize them for a period of time. They don't appear to be able to move or cast, and visually, the team does a good job indicating the enemy is truly in some kind of torment. Next up is Imperio, or the Imperious curse, used to control anyone under its effect to do the bidding of the caster. It's not obvious in the showcase if you have any sort of direct control over the affected target, but at the very least, it seems they'll be able to attack whomever you're currently focusing on and use something from their ability kit. Bringing up the rear is the ever-deadly Avada Kedavra. There's no other spell like it, and it's truly the end-all be-all when it comes to dark magic. Dubbed the Killing Curse, it'll level anything unfortunate enough to be in its path. The devs have chosen to keep this spell true to nature, instantly defeating foes even as large as mountain trolls. We're not sure how or if this spell will be gated throughout the game, but once it's unlocked, it'll sure to be an essential spell in any battle loadout. Any Witcher wizard worth their magic should have some sense of how to control the battlefield. These next spells introduce critical elements of crowd control and utility to level the playing field when facing multiple or difficult enemies. Let's take a look at possibly one of the most famous of these spells, Leviosa. When used, you lift an enemy or object into the air, which takes them out of the fight for a period of time, unable to cast or move. Use this to great effect to escape a situation or further engage a group. This pairs nicely with something like Descendo, especially when fighting groups of enemies. The spell is meant to lower or drop something from the air, but when used on ground targets, it's essentially bouncing them off of the ground and leaves them suspended, also removing them from combat for a few moments. These two spells combined can give you a huge advantage when trying to isolate targets and improve your odds of success. I'm sure you've started to pick up on the combo potential here. It may be difficult to string all of this together, and that's where the team introduces your basic strike. This is meant to be a combo filler and hit foes with a basic attack. After blocking a spell, you can then counter with a full-blown Stupefy, which temporarily staggers the target. Basic strikes don't take up a spell slot and are used to string together multiple major spells. Stupefy is also an independent ability that doesn't take up a combo slot, but instead is tied directly to the counter function. One of my all-time favorite combos that we've seen so far is probably the Disarm and Command attack duo. Disarming opponents is a basic dueling skill taught in school and one we've seen many times in combat. In this footage, we see our character use Expelliarmus to disarm one of the enemy guards and then use a combo of Apugno to command the now free sword to attack that target. It's such a satisfying use of objects in the game, and the devs did a great job including this level of detail. If you look close, you can see Apugno being linked to the R1 button, indicating it will be a built-in function once unlocked. Another nice quality of life ability that doesn't take up a spell slot. The next duo that will see frequent use is the Accio and Depulso spells for both utility and combat. Accio is on full display, being used to draw objects closer to you. You'll utilize this for solving puzzles, traversing the environment, and in combat to weave into various combo attacks. In the same vein, Depulso will push objects away from you, including enemies. I can imagine we'll see more of this spell in combat, as it'll be a great way to quickly make space between you and enemies that try and get too close or deal their damage, such as trolls or animals. If you find yourself overwhelmed at the speed of an enemy or just need to eke out a little more crowd control, you'll find Arresto may be worth a cast. You'll slow down your opponent's cast and movement abilities and render them pretty much useless for a short period of time. We've seen this work both on the ground or in the air, and looks like a subtle but effective way that may just give you the small advantage you need to walk away from the battle alive. Another utility/combo spell is the cutting spell, or Defindo. You'll use this to cut or split objects throughout your gameplay, but we've seen this almost exclusively used in combat from the footage so far. Its signature slash animation can be seen flying towards an opponent, and when it lands, looks to push an enemy backwards as a stagger and interrupt effect. Now, it wouldn't be much of a wizard showdown if you couldn't somehow defend yourself. This is where Protego comes to your aid. This appears to be the basic parry mechanic within the game. As you engage enemies and dueling partners alike, you'll receive notifications of incoming attacks, which you can parry and even follow up with a counterattack. The devs have dropped some clues that suggest upgrades are possible for this ability, but nothing we've seen confirmed or fleshed out quite yet. Next up, we have something that complements the stealth play style. When used, Petrificus Totalis will completely paralyze the target, causing them to go stiff and unable to move. Technically, they remain fully conscious and aware of what's happening, they just can't do anything about it, which sounds awful. We see here the spell is highlighted by name as you creep close to your target, again, hinting that this may not take up a spell slot, but instead remain a situational trigger to be used within a certain range of enemies or during stealth. Before we close out the offensive ability list, we gotta talk about the Ancient Magic bar. As your character progresses, you'll unlock various abilities linked to ancient magic that can be used in encounters. Engaging enemies charges up your ancient magic meter, and we're told at least 2 ways to build up this faster: performing successful combos and by picking up magic essences dropped by enemies. Once one of these bars are full, you'll have the ability to unleash a powerful and often deadly attack on an unsuspecting foe. You don't get to select which ability this is, rather the effect is determined by the type of enemy you're casting it on. This is a really fun way the team has introduced more offensive abilities into the game without taking up a dedicated spell slot, and we're excited to see what different effects Ancient Magic has on the various enemy types. As we wind down towards the end of confirmed spells, we venture into almost exclusively utility spells that most likely won't see combat, but are rather used to aid the caster in different environmental situations. The Disillusionment Charm opens up a true stealth playstyle within the game, allowing players to blend in with their environment. The next utility spell we know of is Revelio. We know this will be a quick slottable spell on the D-pad as shown through various in-game footage. Aside from story progression, we'll use the spell to reveal collection items such as field guide pages, hidden doors and pathways, as well as any number of secrets hidden throughout the game world, maybe even people or creatures. Finally, the well-known Lumos or Illumination spell. Expect to use this often to light your way down a dark path in the Forbidden Forest, highlight wall writing while in the depths of a cave or dungeon, or simply illuminate your way around the castle after hours. Let's end with a little speculation. While not directly confirmed as a player spell, we do see Reparo several times throughout the footage. We're going to make an assumption here we'll be granted use of this spell, as it can be an essential way to repair broken objects like bridges or stairways to reach otherwise inaccessible areas. What's a good RPG without a progression system? Hogwarts Legacy promises a few, and I think they're going to play a massive role in how effective we are during some of the most chaotic moments of the game. First, keep in mind Hogwarts Legacy does have a more traditional difficulty system. Players can choose how easy or hard they want the game when creating their character. There's even a story mode for those casual gamers that just want to experience Hogwarts Legacy without all of the extra stress of intense combat. At the moment, there are really 3 systems that I want to highlight, and I imagine they'll all be wildly important once we go hands-on with the game. The first system are talents, and while we haven't seen how deep this system goes, it's safe to assume the developers are following a rather traditional path here. As you level up, you'll gain talent points, which you can then allocate within 5 talent trees. At the moment, we know of 3 talent categories: the Room of Requirement, Stealth, and Core. While the last two talent trees have yet to be confirmed, it's speculated that one focuses on ancient magic, the system we talked about in the spells section, and dark magic, which has been a prominent theme throughout the road to release. While we don't know how talents will influence our gameplay, we do know that each tree has a distinct number of talents within it, and the range is quite dramatic. For instance, during this pre-release showcase, we see that Stealth only has 4 talents, whereas Core has 17. It's a wide range, which is interesting at face value, but until we see how the points influence our actions, it's hard to say with certainty. When it comes to talent systems, I'm a big fan of diversity that changes gameplay. If a system is just increasing passive stats 1% at a time, then you've pretty much lost me. But if each point I allocate drastically changes the way I experience the game, then I'm sold. I would imagine, and this is just a guess, that Hogwarts Legacy will eventually reward players with enough talent points to max out their character. I can't say I'm surprised if that's the direction they take, but after playing a few games with progression that makes you all-powerful, stripping away the challenge does make for a slightly cheapened experience. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, not yet, but the writing is on the wall. Another system tied to progression is gear. You might not expect a traditional gear system in a Hogwarts RPG, but sure enough, that's what players can expect. At this point, we know of 3 confirmed gear slots: gloves, scarves, and uniform. We also know that a head and glasses slot can be utilized, but it's unclear if that's purely cosmetic. Gear comes in different rarities, such as Superb, Extraordinary, and Legendary, and that matters because it directly affects how much you can upgrade that piece of gear. By default, gear features either one offensive or one defensive stat. You can then use magical materials to upgrade that existing stat or unlock the other stat and upgrade it. Based on everything we've seen, it looks like each piece of gear will allow for 3 upgrades in total, which means you'll have to make careful decisions about how you want to upgrade each piece of gear. We don't know if players can manually reset their gear, so for now, we'll just assume our upgrade decisions are permanent. Gear also features traits. Think of these as passive bonuses that you can add to each piece of gear, improving something specific about the way your Witcher Wizard performs in combat. Traits come in at least 3 varieties, level 1, 2, and 3, and from what we've seen, the benefits look to provide you with additional defensive bonuses against certain types of enemies. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat how I feel about this. It's boring and one of my least favorite ways of augmenting gear, but we've only seen tier 1 traits. Things could get much more interesting at tier 2 or 3, but I'm a bit skeptical. Again, I enjoy systems that change playstyles or augment existing playstyles in unique ways, and this just seems to inflate your power level, which I just find a bit uninspiring. Nevertheless, gear is intimately tied to your character progression in the game, but it's also dependent on the third major progression system, the Room of Requirement. I'll admit, I love the way the developers are linking every system together. It doesn't always have to be incredibly deep to be engaging, especially if everything is working in harmony, and that's really how I see all the pieces coming together in Hogwarts Legacy. The Room of Requirement is one part useful, another part wild fan service, and while the latter is exciting, it's the former I really want to talk about. When you break it down, there are multiple aspects to combat that the Room of Requirement feeds into. On one hand, it's a hub for upgrading your gear. We spoke about that a short while ago. At some point in the game, you'll unlock an enchanted loom, which will give you access to this system. The Room of Requirement is also where you'll identify the gear that you find out in the world. Much like the Deckard Cain system from Diablo, players will need to bring mysterious gear back to the identification station to be revealed. How and where we get all of this gear, well, that's still a mystery, but based on everything we've seen, there will be plenty to collect. To upgrade your gear, you'll need special crafting reagents, and these are provided primarily by magical beasts. Throughout the world will be opportunities to rescue and tame these fantastical creatures, and if done successfully, you can bring them back to your menagerie within the Room of Requirement and care for them. The better you care for them, the more willing they are to provide you with their unique crafting reagent. Mooncalf fur, Jobberknoll feathers, Niffler fur, Toadworts, Fwooper feathers, these are all items players will need to upgrade their gear, and they're all provided by magical creatures. Within the menagerie, players will have the option to care for each beast they tame. This breaks down into a few simple functions: love, food, and enrichment. Much like the Harvest Moon games back in the 90s, you'll have the opportunity to pet, feed, and play with each creature, satisfying their basic needs, and in return, they'll provide you with their unique reagent. Some of these functions, such as feeding your magical creatures, can also be automated thanks to special utility items you can conjure within the space. Everything that you conjure in the Room of Requirement can be customized, tweaked, changed, the colors can be varied, but it all does have a cost, usually a moonstone. One aspect of the menagerie we haven't seen is breeding. We know it's a thing thanks to some info panels quickly rolled over during a gameplay showcase, but how it works, well, that is still a mystery. That being said, assume we'll be able to raise our own small army of nifflers or any other creature right from the comfort of the Room of Requirement. Within the room, you'll also be able to do so much more, like brew potions. Based on an earlier showcase of the game, there will be a budget for how many potion stations you can have in the room at one time, but this will provide you with an alternative way of creating items you would otherwise have to buy. Based on a few glimpses throughout various trailers and showcases, we can see that when brewing or growing anything in this space, the item will be set to a timer, a system we see most often in mobile games. Depending on the item that you're creating, that timer will fluctuate, which means you'll have to wait until the timer runs out before you can come back and collect the finished item. The same can be said about growing herbs and magical plants within the Room of Requirement. Potting stations allow players to grow combat plants like the Chinese chomping cabbage and the venomous tentacula, and as you can see, the same timer is associated with growing these items as well. Magical herbs, on the other hand, used in complex potions, can also be grown at a different station in the room. We got a great look at this in the December showcase a few months ahead of launch. There's no doubt the Room of Requirement will be a huge hit for players. Those looking to progress will maximize its potential, pushing its capabilities to the limit. More casual players, well, I think they'll just relish in all the cosmetic goodness the developers are throwing our way, creating a space they can completely customize to their heart's content. That being said, at some point, players will need to pull themselves away from Hogwarts and explore the world around the castle. This is easily one of the most intriguing aspects of the game. We've seen bits and pieces of the wizarding world throughout the books and movies, but the freedom the developers have to create something truly special is remarkable. During the December gameplay preview, the team showcased just how open world Hogwarts Legacy is, and this is something I think a lot of players that typically play open world games will be excited about. As the character is flying across the countryside around Hogwarts, we see small markers everywhere on the minimap. As most of you probably know, each marker is something to do, whether that's an NPC to talk to, a quest to start, or something else entirely. The developers are really smart about how they expose players to this too. While on a broomstick, players don't have unlimited vertical freedom and are, in fact, only allowed to hover above the ground, let's say 20 to 30 feet. While it may sound frustrating, this is actually genius because it forces the player closer to the action, giving them a taste of whatever content is right below them on the ground. Eventually, once players have their own magical flying creature, they will be able to explore the world without restriction, but the developers have confirmed that brooms will be a faster method of transportation. That being said, beast mounts can run on the ground as well as fly without restrictions, so you tell me what's better. Players looking for an instant method of transportation can rely on something different, the Floo network, which acts as the game's fast travel system. Unlocking Floo points is done by simply walking past them, and by the looks of things, there are dozens of them around the game world. We haven't seen the Floo network in full effect quite yet, but based on the number of nodes we've seen in all the preview content, it looks like players will be able to zip around the world quickly, if they need to. Of course, this is an optional system, and if you'd rather ride on a broom or a hippogriff, you can do that. It's perfectly fine. One of the most iconic locations outside of Hogwarts is, of course, Hogsmeade, which seems to be a major hub within Hogwarts Legacy. While the Room of Requirement will provide you with the means to craft your own potions and grow your own herbs, you'll also be able to purchase what you need from the various shops and vendors. At Pippin's Potions, we can see that players will have access to reagents, new crafting recipes, and fully brewed potions. We also know that brooms and gear can be purchased from somewhere within the village. We don't have the exact location or shop at this point, but we got a glimpse of what some of those outfits might look like. There is still a lot of mystery surrounding Hogsmeade, and that's okay, because if they revealed everything ahead of launch, we'd have nothing to truly explore. What we know is that Hogsmeade will provide us with a wide array of content, from shops and vendors to new quests and combat opportunities. I also believe the story will bring us through Hogsmeade multiple times during our adventure. Hogwarts and Hogsmeade provide two of the main settings within the game, but the team isn't stopping there. In fact, there are quite a few wizard hamlets that dot the countryside around Hogwarts. These are smaller villages that actually seem to have quite a lot going on. Various small shops and vendors can be found within each of these hamlets, as well as quests and optional content players can engage with. It's safe to assume all of these will feed into the progression system, rewarding items and XP, as well as providing players an opportunity to fill out that wizard field guide we talked about before. Don't forget, the Wizarding World is also battling a creeping evil. The rolling hillside of the country might be pleasant enough, but there are other, more sinister areas within the world we'll have to explore, such as the Forbidden Forest. There, players will have to confront giant spiders and, I imagine, dark wizards. We've also seen a variety of dungeons, crypts, and vaults throughout the various trailers filled with skeletons, trolls, and other evils. It's hard to say how these systems will play out in the game. RPGs are known for iconic dungeon crawling experiences, so it wouldn't be a far stretch to assume we'll experience something like that in Hogwarts Legacy. With all the secrets scattered around the Wizarding World, I bet some of these encounters are actually right under our nose at Hogwarts as well. I have to imagine these types of environments will not only tie into the main story, but will also be the backdrop for some fantastic loot, whether it's gear, items, or something else entirely. If you're still with us, thank you. I know that was a lot to talk about, but that's actually a good thing. One sign that a team is confident in their game is the willingness to show off and share information, and that's exactly what the Portkey Games team has done leading up to launch. The idea of a Harry Potter RPG is something that people have been talking about for years, and the fact that we're so close to living out that fantasy is beyond exciting. Everything we've seen, from the mysterious story to the beautifully realized castle to the interesting interconnected systems, have us excited to play the game, and if you're still watching, I assume you're excited as well. With so much to wrap our heads around, I'm curious, what are you most excited about for Hogwarts Legacy? Will you be playing on the hardest difficulty, pushing the limits of what it means to be a witch or wizard, or will you be taking things slow, exploring every secret passageway inside of Hogwarts? Let us know in the comments. Of course, we'll be covering the game top to bottom here on the channel, so if you're interested in more Hogwarts Legacy videos in your feed, do me a solid and hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. We have so many video ideas planned and we can't wait to share them all with you. Although Hogwarts Legacy is a single-player game, we still want to invite you to join our Legacy gaming community on Discord. We recently revamped the entire server with a special section just for Hogwarts Legacy, so check out the link below and join today. I hope you all enjoyed our ultimate preview for Hogwarts Legacy. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.